reading for this morning is Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 40. It says, "But Martha was distracted and much serving, and she went up to him and said, 'Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me.' But the Lord answered her, 'Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her.'"
Thank you, Ronnie. Good morning. What a good day. It's a good day. Did you get up and have your coffee? Some of you didn't, I can tell. If you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, it's okay. The day is going to get better, and we know if you did by looking at you. But it's a good day to be here. It's a good day to worship God. And as I look out into this crowd, I think, man, I'm so excited to be here. And one of the things I wanted to state first off is this. We are not conquered by a virus. We are not controlled by a virus. We are compelled by the love of Jesus Christ. And we got to remember that, brethren. This congregation has been through many things together. We've sold our buildings, we've closed down our doors, we've reopened our doors. I really believe that all of us praying together, this virus is going to go away, and we're going to keep on serving God. We got to keep that in mind. If you're visiting this morning, and we do have visitors, maybe this is your first time here, you're in the right spot, you haven't taken anybody's seat, we're glad that you're here. Just a couple miles outside of Jerusalem, there's this little town called Bethany, and it's the home of three individuals, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, that were very close to Jesus Christ. They were very close to him. They were very acquainted with him. They had listened to his teaching. In fact, we see in John chapter 11, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Think about that statement just for a second. How deep that is. He loved them very much, even to weep later for them. He was their friend. They built a strong relationship with him, and this would have been a relationship that developed deeper and deeper and deeper. And Luke makes it clear in his writing that Jesus made himself at home in their house. He probably borrowed their pillow. He probably went through their house and laid down for a while, or rested, or used them in that friendship. And what a blessing that would be to have that kind of relationship with somebody, especially as you're traveling and teaching and healing and working hard. So before we get anywhere this morning, I want to establish this. Christ built long-lasting, close friendships. Think about that. Since he had no place to lay his head, as it says in Matthew chapter 8 and verse 20, he had no permanent dwelling. He probably looked to Mary and Martha and the home of Lazarus and their home for that rest. He actively sought these friends out. And here is the Son of God who came, and he didn't come looking down his nose at people. Look at me, I'm so great. He didn't come with a parade of glamour and, expecting to be above everybody else and pointing down at everybody else about things. He came as a servant. Maybe you remember or heard of that poem that someone wrote years ago called One Solitary Life. It says this: he was born in an obscure village, the son of a peasant woman. He grew up in another village where he worked in a carpenter shop until he was 30. Then for 3 years, he became a wandering preacher. Lane and I know what that's like, right? He never wrote a book. He never held an office. He never had a family or owned a house. He didn't go to college. He never visited a big city. He never traveled 200 miles from the place where he was born. He did none of those things that one usually associates with greatness. He had no credentials but himself. Christ came saying the words, "Whoever wants to be great among you must be a" what? Servant. But there's also more to us than just serving and getting those things done. There's got to be more than just, well, we accomplished this, we're a servant. We did the job and we're done, isn't there? There's more to it than that. I remember one time a woman, not in this congregation, several years back, She called the office and she said, Logan, I'm bringing something up to the church kitchen, and I'll be there in about 15 minutes. Click. And I'm still on the phone. I'll never forget that. I was like, okay. Sometimes Lane and I went, okay. She said, she had said, I need you to open the door. So I opened the door, and here she walks in. She has a casserole in her hand, and she sets it on the kitchen counter, and she turns around and she looks at me and she said, there. The church can't say I don't ever do anything. And she walked out. Now, I'm not as dumb as people think I am with people, and I learned really quickly, Logan, just don't say anything. So I didn't say anything, and she just walked out, but I'll never forget that stare. And obviously, someone had upset her. Obviously, someone had pushed her to do more maybe than her heart was willing. If you choose to serve, you prepare yourself for the criticism that comes along with it as well. And don't let someone's words stop you from serving God. I know that sounds easy, but don't let someone's words stop you from serving. Now we come to Luke 10, where we're going to look at this first encounter, or this encounter with Mary and Martha and Jesus. But I want to look at context just for a second of chapter 10 of Luke. There's some context in this chapter, and I really believe it's about more than just doing. I think that's what the whole chapter is like. Here, as we're talking about one thing is needful, remember here, the 72 are sent out, and they return, and they make this statement. They said, think about this. The 72 that were chosen, and they're sent out. Laborers are few, and they're sent out, and they come back, and they say, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And Jesus basically says, no. He says there in that text, don't rejoice that the spirits are subject to you. Rejoice that your name is written in heaven. There's a priority there, isn't there? Well, so it's if we're looking at about just getting the work done, Luke 10:25, the next story, the Good Samaritan, where the lawyer stands up and says, teacher, he said, give me the list. Give me the things that I need to do to inherit eternal life. Give me the list. Sometimes we're like that. We want the list. Just give me those things. And Jesus responds with, here's a list. Try this one out. And it's just the words that we just sang. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. How do you put that into a list? Well, then he kind of smugly says, after Jesus says, and love your neighbors yourself, well, who's my neighbor? And then Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan, and he essentially says in the end, are you the Levite, the priest, or the Good Samaritan? You see how this common theme is going, and then we come to the end of Luke 10 with Mary and Martha, where Ronnie just read, and they're in the home of Mary and Martha, and Martha comes to Jesus and says, I'm summarizing, she said, tell Mary to get busy doing. You see that? Look at her. Don't you care that my sister has left me to do all these things to serve basically alone? Don't you care where I'm at here? And can't you see what I'm doing? And Martha was serving as well. Now, we all get criticized, don't we, for different things? It's human nature. We got to remember that. It is human nature for people. The first thing that they will do when you serve the Lord is to criticize you. It's human nature. We've got to be prepared for that. As soon as someone, with the help of the devil, you remember the two words in the Bible, fault finders? As soon as you find those people and they come to you and they find fault in you or they find fault in something, how quick are you to quit? How quick are we to quit? Maybe you've realized in your work and in your serving that it's more about him than it is about them. Oh, I've had someone criticize me, a lot. We get it a lot. It's whenever you're serving, you're going to get it. But it's got to be about him and not them. Jesus doesn't rebuke Martha because Martha is a servant too. Maybe she needs noticed. You ever thought about that? Maybe she needs a little bit of notice, and he doesn't rebuke her, and I don't hear his voice as saying, Martha, what are you thinking? I hear his voice, Martha, Martha. You are anxious and troubled about many things. Mary has chosen the good part, which will not be taken from her. Here's a great point. Learning under the presence of Christ is the priority. Sitting at the feet of Jesus Christ, not focusing on who is or who isn't. That's not the priority. It's easy for us to gather up in an activity or worship or Sunday night or Wednesday night and think to ourselves, well, I wonder why he isn't here. I wonder why she isn't here. I wonder why, and be Martha, basically. And the more negatively we serve the Lord with irritation or frustration and who is and who isn't, the less and less and less we will serve. That's the way Satan works. Well, Martha kind of grew irritable at Mary, and, someone said, maybe she cleared her throat. Lord. Maybe she clanged the utensils together a little bit, Lord, I'm over here. I don't know. But Jesus didn't rebuke with hatefulness. Martha, you're troubled about many things. One thing is needed. Then later in our second scene that we're going to look at, here is Mary and Martha in John 12. You might want to turn to John 12 or Mark 14, but John 12, where Mary is anointing Christ with this expensive perfume or ointment. She had such a passion for serving, didn't she? It's like here she was serving, and then now she's pouring this perfume on Christ, and she has such a passion, and it's like every time we turn around, here is Mary with this passion serving Jesus. And they were at Bethany in chapter 12 and verse 1 of John, and they're at the home of Simon the leper, and Lazarus was there. What a sight to see. Can you imagine this? Picture this, you guys. Picture this. They're in the home of Simon the leper. Did you catch that? He's not a leper anymore. He's healed, and here is Jesus associating with someone that you didn't associate with. Not to mention that, but Lazarus is there. It's like somebody could say, hey, let's all get together at a table with Lazarus and Simon the leper, and let's talk about what Jesus has done for us. Can you imagine that conversation? The text says Martha served like she normally would, and Lazarus is reclining at the table with Jesus. Where was Mary? Remember? She has a passion for serving. She takes a pound of expensive ointment, an alabaster flask, and she breaks it, as Mark 14 says. She breaks this alabaster flask over his head, and the perfume cost about 300 denarii. A denarii is about 1 day's wage. Imagine, this is almost a year of salary if you look at it that way. Today, in our average, I kind of looked it up and compared it to today's average salary. A year is $54,000. Now you kind of get an idea in your mind. Imagine a very expensive perfume. And here's Mary again, in her passionate serving heart. But Mary can't catch a break. Here comes Judas. Judas tries to stir up the trouble and basically, why wasn't this sold and given to those who were poor? His heart was twisted. He was all about money. And Mary was expressing again her devotion to Christ despite someone complaining or criticizing her. Do not let the sound of critics stop you serving. Do not, brethren, I'll say it again, do not let anyone, even in this room, stop you from worship, stop you from sitting at his feet, stop you from Bible class, stop you from serving in the kitchen, stop you from leading an activity, leading a prayer, reading a scripture. Do not let anyone stop you from serving God. The main priority is his presence here. That's the main priority. Nevertheless, Mary's being criticized again, and Jesus says, why do you trouble this woman? She has done a beautiful thing. In the first story, we have Martha, who is the older sister, and she's have somewhat maybe of an understandable reason pointing at her sister, but either way, Mary chose the good part. Nothing is more important than worship and devotion to Jesus Christ. I want to ask you this question this morning. How long since you have done something beautiful to honor Jesus Christ? Do those who are hurting get flowers from you, from your family? Do the hurting get cards from you? Do they get a call from you? Do they get shown any kind of attention from you or your family? We just had someone that endured a loss in our congregation. Remember what Jesus said in Matthew 25? He said in verse 45, whatever you do for the least of these, you have done to me, he said. Do you sit with the grieving? Do you sit with the lonely? Do you sit with the abandoned? I'm going to stop myself for a second. One of the reasons, and Lane talks about me, I'm going to talk about him. One of the reasons if I can, one of the reasons I absolutely love Lane, he is not about competition, he's about serving God. He's not about, you did this, Logan, I need to do this, or I did this, and you did this, you preached about this, I preached about that. We are serving God together. We all don't have time to waste on not serving God and criticizing one another. We just keep serving. I love Lane for that. I love them. And so that reminds me, Logan, don't worry about any of these things. Just stay busy. You know what? When you get to know Christ on a deeper level, you will have no choice but to invite him into your home, into your life. You will learn to love Christ so much that you will long to pour the perfume on someone else. You will long to serve someone else. And you know what's going to happen? Someone's going to come along and they're going to find fault. They're going to try to get you to stop serving in some capacity. Do not stop serving. I called my dad one time, 2 years into ministry. By the way, I've almost been a minister 20 years. I called my dad, and 2 years into it, and I said, Dad, I'm frustrated. Something happened. I can't tell you about it. And I was extremely frustrated. And Mom, she's always been the, oh, bless your heart, sweet young one of mine, And I, oh, thank you, Mom, thank you, Dad was like, are you going to quit? I needed to hear that. I ask you the same thing. Are you going to quit? Satan's really trying hard to close the doors of this congregation, either through a virus or whatever, right? Are we going to quit? I want to tell you two little examples of stories, and then we'll close. A positive and a negative story, okay? Actually, the negative's not really negative. I was told this week and last week, two different occasions this week, last week, that we are false teachers, okay? And one of them was a statement directly at me at a restaurant. You're a false teacher. Y'all are water baptizers. Well, I'm not going to get into the answer to that and how many water baptisms are actually in Acts and how Christ commanded baptism. But anyway, you hear that, and what are Lane and I going to say to that? We quit. Sorry, you're right. We're done. Or we could respond with hatefulness. No. Or we could serve God even more. And we can learn more about his word, and we can share his word with others. We have a choice to make, brothers and sisters. Now, a more positive example. We were selling a vehicle last week. My oldest is looking for something a little bit more better for miles per gallon for fuel. And so here comes a man from the community into our driveway. I don't even know him, never met him, okay? He walks into our driveway and we're haggling. You know the haggling thing? Don't you love that, by the way? He's like, well, I'll give you this. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. And it was like really awkward silence. And we're just kind of staring. And that's what happens. You just stare. I'm like, I got to break the silence with something. I said, I don't know if you're looking for a congregation, but we have a really, and he goes, 4 words, I know your church. I was like, well, I didn't sell this vehicle. No, I'm kidding. Well, you do. I know Jay Mock. I know Paul Mock. I know Rusty and Tammy. He listed off 12 names probably in that era. You have some of the most amazing, genuine, kind-hearted people I've ever met. I love this congregation. But you know what? If he had really mean words, I still love his church. Love Christ and his church more and more. When people slam you, love it more and more. When people fail you, love it more and more. When someone criticizes you, we love it more and more and more. We will still love it. I was thinking about this not long ago when someone missed their opportunity to serve, lead singing, or prayer. I don't even remember what it was. Someone just jumped in, didn't say anything about the person who totally forgot about it. And we just jump in, not say anything negative, and just keep on serving. You are going to bring some food someday, pretty quickly, hopefully, to the Focus Sunday meal. Maybe someone's going to come up and say, that was the worst sauerkraut and weenies that we've ever heard of or ever tasted. Bring it again. I want to close with this. Maybe you're Martha. I want you to think about that just for a second. Maybe you're Martha. Maybe you're getting overlooked. Maybe you or your family is getting overlooked. Maybe you're frustrated. I plead with you, maybe you want to respond and start a program where people aren't overlooked. Maybe you see other people who are lonely, and you want to start some way to help out with that. But please, brothers and sisters, do not quit. We are Christians. We are his children. Maybe you need prayers this morning. Maybe you're struggling. Maybe you were singing a song just before the lesson and you were struggling to get out the words because your heart is hurting. If that's you, we can pray for you. Or maybe you're not a Christian and you're fighting that battle of the world and trying to who you're following and if you're a child of his or not, and you need to come forward and take that step. Are you choosing the good part? Are you choosing the good part? If you have a need this morning, you can come while we stand and sing.